Hi, I'm Jason Roberts. I'm a recruiter. I've been a recruiter for 25 years. About a year ago, I was in a place where I really wasn't happy with my job, and I needed to find a new one. And I used some of the inside scoops, some of the tricks that I know from being a recruiter to make that happen. This video is all about exactly what I did. Stay tuned. Before we get started, I'd like to ask for your help. If you can hit that like button, subscribe, and that bell icon, you'll be notified when the content about how to find a new job, how to find a better thing comes up. All right, here's what I did. When it was time to look for a new job, I'll tell you what was going on in my life. I was in this job super stressful. My job before was at the world's largest bank, and I had a big team that reported to me. I had 450 people that worked for me in this place. So it was a large leadership type role. And the environment was not an environment that I really loved. Being a regulated environment is really difficult to work in. So it was time to look for another job. And I started doing that. I started looking for a new job. But remember, I was burned out. I did not like where I was. So the first thing I did was I had to decide what kind of job that I wanted. And I guess I ought to talk through what my system was that I followed. I have a 5-step process that I use when looking for a job. And I really designed this more for myself. And I'm passing it along to you just because maybe it'll be useful to you too. So I'll just tell you what the 5 steps are. The first is that I chose a target. What am I looking for? What do I care about? What do I want to do? I searched for jobs. You have to search for jobs somehow. Where do you go about that? Which sources do you target first? And where do you find those jobs? I applied for jobs. And what sort of resume did I need to have? How do I follow up on status? How was I tracking my status? That was actually a big deal. I treated it almost like a sales process in real life. Then I went into interviews and interview prep and how I went about organizing my interviews. And finally, the 5th step is offer and offer negotiation. So I followed this 5-step process from targeting, searching, applying, interviewing, and offering. And that was the full story of what I did. And I'll give you a quick overview of what each one of those is about. And then there are other videos that I'll link to along the way where I've gone into more depth about each one of those. And you can take a look at those as well. All right. So first is targeting. Now, I was very uncomfortable in my job. I didn't like it. I wasn't sure I still wanted to do what I was doing. So I started looking at everything. I mean, everything at this point. I'm looking at jobs. Yeah, I was looking at do I have an ATM business? Do I become a Bitcoin bro? But all the various sort of businesses that you can do on your own. I was looking at those. Buying car washes actually do really well. So should I buy into car washes at some point? So everything I was looking at getting out of even the recruiting business, which is what I've been doing for a very, very long time, right? I've been a recruiter for a while. So should I get out of that business? And I was looking into all these different things. And once I settled on a couple of things. One, I would look for a job that's another recruiting job while I investigated some of these other opportunities. So I looked at a recruiting job, and specifically I had to look at, well, what is it I don't like about what I'm doing now? And it makes me want to do something different. And what is that different thing? And what should I look for in the next job? And what I did is I looked back to the job that I liked the most in my entire career. And the job that I liked the most in my career was a job where I ran technology and analytics at a recruiting outsourcing company. I like working for companies that do recruiting for a living. So that was when I really enjoyed my job the most and what I decided that I wanted to go back to. So that's how I started targeting, setting my sights. There's a couple of companies I thought were really good in that space, and a couple of companies that I went for. I ended up getting my first choice, and I got very lucky in that as well. Searching for jobs. Now, I started searching for jobs. There's a couple of ways that you can do that. The very first thing I did was I reached out to my network. So if there are places that I want to go, places that meet my criteria for the target that I want, who do I know at those companies is the big question. And in fact, I knew some people. I've had a very long career, so I know some people. I have a network. It happens almost automatically if you maintain good relationships. And I knew some people, and I started reaching out to my friends And I said, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Here's what's happening. And I networked through and ultimately found a person who within my target company that was hiring. And in fact, I thought they had a job that wasn't the job that I totally wanted, but it was a job I've done in the past. So I thought I was talking to them about that job, but it turns out they were creating a new job that was perfect for me. And I really wanted that. So when I talked to them at first, they said, well, I don't know about this one so much, but I've got this other idea. And it was perfect. It's doing exactly what I did when I was happiest in my career, and really where I'd love to finish my career in recruiting if I can. That was really great. So I searched for jobs, reached out my contacts first, but that wasn't the only place I searched. Now, while I'm going through the process, and it was a long process, it was like 60, maybe 90 days worth of activity to ultimately land that job, get started, and all of those things. I was looking other places too, and I was doing all the things that you normally do. I went on to Indeed and onto LinkedIn, and I reached out to friends who told other friends what was happening. And so I was working that network. I applied cold to a few jobs, heads of recruiting jobs, things of that nature that I thought looked interesting, that I thought looked like good jobs, jobs at other companies that I thought would be better versions of what I was doing at that time. So I just made lots of those types of inquiries. And my trick that I always had there, and I'll just give you my inside trick, is that I would find those jobs, I would apply for those jobs, and then I would figure out who the hiring manager was. I would look in LinkedIn, I could decipher and do some investigative work, figure out who the hiring manager was. And then I would reach out to that hiring manager directly and talk to them about the job, even though I had an application in. So I was working that angle. And in fact, I was pretty close on 2 or 3 jobs when the one that I really wanted ultimately came through and I was able to close it. I had 2 others that were in the offer stage. I had done a number of interviews and we were in the midst of negotiating an offer at the time that I accepted this job. So that's how I did that. Is I went and I interviewed with these managers by hunting them down. And I'll link to the video that shows you exactly how to do that here. There's a couple of other tricks with the application process I'll link to. Some of those are you need a really good resume now and customizing your resume for every job. So I have probably a dozen resumes that are slight variations on the same story. My story is still my story. It's just the parts that I choose to emphasize may be different. And I have a bunch of those. And there's a way to customize that using ChatGPT that I'll show you here in this other linked video. I use a resume template that gets me past the applicant tracking system. And I'll show you that template as well. So hopefully you can use any of those things. I'm not using them anymore. I'm pretty happy where I am now. So I'll make those available to you. Finally I got to interviews. And what's great about interviews is you start out with the recruiter, and the recruiter, once you're there, they kind of want you to do well. Their job is to help close a candidate into a position. They're a matchmaker more than anything else. So I would leverage that recruiter and the rapport I could build with them early on with the please and thank yous and whatever you can do to build rapport. I would leverage that rapport in order to get the scoop on what to talk to the hiring manager about. So what does the hiring manager really care about? Like, what have they told you their pain points are? Why didn't the last person in this job work out? Those sorts of things are the things that we talked about. If the person just left on their own, what they really like about that last person? What would they like to see again? Would they like to replace that role with the exact same type of person? Those are the sorts of questions I would ask of the recruiter, so that by the time I got to the hiring manager, I had a pretty good profile in mind of what that hiring manager is. So the idea is to prep for the interview using the conversation from the previous interview. And I would do the same thing when I got to the hiring manager. I'd say, oh, great. Nice to meet you. Here's some questions that I have for you. And then towards the end of the thing, I would always ask, what's the process from here? They'd say, oh, you're going to interview with this person and this person. And I'd say, oh, interesting. The first person you told me about, what do they care about? What are the problems that they're facing right now? And what can I help them with? If I were to come here, what would they need me to do first? Those are the sorts of conversations I would have. I think it helps with the hiring manager for you to do that, but it helps with the person you're talking to for sure, because you know where they're coming from. And remember, nobody's good at interviewing. Nobody's actually been to a training on interviewing. So they don't know what they're doing. So if you can go in with a game plan of, if I talk about these 4 things, that's what they'll care about the most. And that's will put a good word in for me the best. Go in with your own game plan and be ready to take charge of the interview as a recruiter to do that. And I have to be careful not to do it in too obvious of a manner, but you can make it a very relaxed conversation by saying, well, have you ever had problems with this thing, which they've had a problem with? And they'll say, oh, yes, we have that problem for sure. You can say, well, let me tell you how I've solved that problem in the past. And you see how you can lead the conversation a little bit and you work in answers that you've pre-built and that you're ready for 100%. All right. So that's the interview. Now let's talk about the offer. Offers are interesting. People have very little flexibility in offers most of the time. What will happen is they'll come to you with their best possible offer. They may ask you in advance, what are you looking for? What's your salary range? Never answer the question. You get them to offer money first. My response was, I'm in a very different industry. I work in banking and that place prints money. I don't know what's reasonable to even ask coming in at this level. I'm at a level that I'm not sure what the right number is. What is your range? So I made it look like I'm probably higher, but I'm not happy where I am. So I'm coming in low. I'm going to take a pay cut. And they gave me a range and I said, perfect. You're almost there. You're just under my number. You're just under my range. And then I gave a number that was slightly above where their target was. I sent them to do a little homework. Now they went and did some homework, and in fact, their range was really their range. They couldn't come up any higher. And in fact, I did have to take a pay cut in order to make my way over. But man, have I been happier. It is a different thing altogether. Money's not everything, right? Money's not everything. And I can tell you the exact price of happiness in my world. If you and I are ever having drinks one day, I'll tell you exactly what that is. And it's not cheap, man, way better way to live your life. So that's how I negotiate an offer. And once you come up with a number, once you have a written offer, it's very difficult to get that changed. So the negotiations happen in that sort of loose time, that conversation before the offer, where you're sort of back and forth. Recruiters will call this a verbal offer, but it's not a verbal offer. You're still in the negotiation at this point. So you're negotiating until you get paper. Once you get paper, you might be able to go back one more time and ask for something different if they got something off from what you think you had agreed upon previously. But really, you're pretty much stuck with what you've got and you have to make the decision to go or not. All right. So that's the process that I follow overall. I'll link to videos all along the way so that you can kind of know where I go from here. And I'll just leave a list of tools in the top comment and in the description here so that you can see the tools that I used. And those are all available to you, no charge or anything. I don't have a way to charge you, honestly. So those are all available to you to use at any time. So my 5 steps: choose a target, search for jobs, apply for jobs, interview, and then finally offer. This 5-step process, super easy. And it's not super different than anybody else. It's just slightly nuanced. Hopefully this helps you. I hope you have the best of luck in finding a job, and good luck in your search.